listen, I want to ask you about something, an incredible story. In English Canada, we call it the CBC, but in French Canada, in Quebec, it's called Radio-Canada. Same corporate entity, but actually a bit of a different editorial philosophy. I mean, for example, Radio-Canada was very separatist for quite a while. It has its own politics that the English side doesn't. And Radio-Canada, that is the French language CBC, did something that never in a million years would their English brothers and sisters do. They did an investigation, and I only know the headlines here, so I'm going to rely on you for the details. They tested some of these gender clinics. They said, if we send in a minor child, how quickly can they get a prescription for puberty blockers or some other, physically and mentally dangerous prescriptions? And like the very fact that they were stinging some of these transgender doctors and clinics would be unthinkable at the CBC. They did it. They published it, and the results were terrifying. Why don't you fill in some of the details on this for our viewers, Chris?
Sure. So I literally just watched this whole thing and I made some notes. One of the most shocking things is towards the end of this documentary. And if you Google, what's it called? The Trans Express English subtitles, you'll find it with English subtitles. So they sent a 14-year-old girl into this gender clinic in Quebec. In 5 minutes, this is a private clinic where she can get the letter that she needs to get hormones. In 5 minutes, this clinician was already talking about double mastectomies for her.
Oh my God.
And hysterectomies.
Oh my God.
Literally 5 minutes in.
Oh my God.
In less than 9 minutes, she was writing the letter for this girl to get testosterone.
Oh my God. So first meeting, parents not there, I take it? Parents not there, no guardian, just kid.
Parents weren't there. The doctor said, do your parents know you're here? She said, yeah. And
maybe, and obviously the whole thing was a sting. It's sort of like 21 Jump Street.
It was.
But go ahead.
But we don't need to just rely on this sting, Ezra, because they focus on a few other young people, two of whom are already detransitioning.
Oh, wow.
And one of these girls, she had been admitted to the hospital for anorexia. When she was young, really little, she developed really young. So she didn't like her curves when she was 12 or 13. And so then she developed an eating disorder. She was admitted to the hospital for her anorexia. She didn't want to have her breasts. Two doctors recommend she get puberty blockers, and another said she should get a double mastectomy.
I can barely stand to hear this stuff, Chris. And I know you have to hear it.
And she has borderline personality disorder. This other girl had borderline personality disorder. This is where kids, they have poor self-image. They're very emotional. They're very sensitive. They make rash decisions. But
it's called being a teenager. It's hard being a teenager. You're growing up. Your body's changing. You have hormones. You're trying to find your place in the world. It's tough being a teenager, but never before did you have these institutions, very authoritative, wearing a doctor's gown, saying, we understand you and we will put you on the path, and don't tell your parents. And yeah, you need to hack off your body parts. In a way, they're predators, Chris. And it's so heartbreaking to hear about. And I'm just a stranger hearing about these. I can only imagine being a family member or the child itself. Anyhow, I'm sorry I interrupted you. I find these things so awful to listen to.
That's fine. Speaking of family members, so this other young girl, one psychologist that she'd seen had said, we think your daughter has borderline personality disorder. When they saw the gender clinic, the doctor literally said, borderline personality disorder does not exist. BPD are transgender people. And they started transitioning this girl. These are just struggling kids with other mental health issues.
That's their solution. Chris, I find this. So this is in Quebec, you're saying? This was in Quebec. Radio-Canada. Well, let me ask you this, because, Quebecers fancy themselves very socially progressive, and especially on matters of sex and sexuality. That's an extra reason I find this CBC Radio-Canada reports astonishing. What's been the reaction? Has there been a reaction to these clinics, or has the hostility been towards the CBC Radio-Canada for exposing it? Do you know what the echoes are in the days since this aired?
Well, the people I've seen online who would fashion themselves as progressives are just trying to dismiss this and saying that's not the typical thing. But I mean, you got to watch this. People watching this at home, really Google this, Trans Express. It's incredible. It's a very independent investigation. There's no agenda to it at all. And in every single case, it's exactly what people like myself have been saying, which is that there's no safeguards. If a child says they're trans, they just go along with it. We have to realize that just because you have MD at the end of your name, that doesn't mean anything. There are zealots who are doctors, and these, essentially they're religious zealots believing in this trans faith. They're working in these gender clinics and they're harming thousands of kids.
Yeah. Well, Chris, I'm glad you're doing this important work. It's fascinating how you are on the ground in the streets, one-on-one in a Herculean effort that no one else in the world is doing. And I suggested the documentary to you because you've got so much fascinating footage, and I'm glad you're open to it. And of course, Rebel would love to team up with you. I mean, I think you've got a hell of a story that anyone would be interested in. I love following you on Twitter because I never know where you're going to pop up next. And each interaction is a fascinating little moment. We love doing what we call streeters, man on the street conversations. That's sort of what you're doing. You're doing it every day with the most controversial subject around, and you let people talk at great length. It's such an amazing thing you're doing, and I think it's unique. And I think that's why you were such a hit at Rebel News Live last year. And anyway, I'm gushing again, but partly because I want to change the subject, because listening to the details of this, I guess I just don't have as strong a constitution as you do.
I get it.
And I should toughen up a bit, but I'm glad there's tough guys like you out there who are tough on the inside, but gentle on the outside.
Thank you very much, Ezra. I appreciate all of your help in exposing this madness. I'm off to Australia next month, so I'll be going there to Melbourne and Sydney, and then I'll be heading over to Toronto for the Rebel News Live conference.
Oh, great.
I'm really looking forward to that.
Well, you know, it's amazing the places you go, and it'll be very interesting to see how Australia reacts, because they're in some ways they're quite similar to Canada, but they also have they're sort of a rambunctious, rowdy group. I wonder how politically correct they are on this stuff. I look forward to your reports from there. Well, Chris, great to see you again. Folks, you can follow him at Billboard Chris on Twitter, and we're about to announce tickets for the Rebel News Live. I'm not sure if that website is live right now, but if not, it'll be very soon. So you'll want to come and see Chris in person. He really was, I think, other than Tamara Leach, who played the concert at the end of our Calgary Rebel News Live, which was just amazing. I think Chris's presentation was the most delightfully received. So you'll certainly want to be there. Take care, Chris. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.